Hey everyone, and welcome back to Your Brain Lied. Today, we're diving into a topic that I think affects more of us than we realize. Trauma. Now, when I say trauma, I don't just mean the really big, obvious things like war or accidents or abuse, although those are absolutely traumatic experiences. But trauma can also be sneakier. It can be hiding in plain sight, shaping how we see ourselves in the world without us even realizing it. It's like imagine your life as a garden. Big traumas are like a bulldozer that comes through and flattens everything. It's obvious, devastating damage. But smaller traumas are more like weeds. They might seem insignificant at first, but if they're not dealt with, they can choke out the good stuff and make it hard for anything else to grow. So, what are these weeds we're talking about? Well, a lot of it boils down to something called invalidation. Invalidation is when your feelings, your thoughts, your experiences are dismissed, ignored, or even mocked by other people. It's like you're telling someone it's cold, and they tell you it's actually hot, and you're just being dramatic. Over time, that can really mess with your sense of reality. Think about it. As kids, we learn about the world and ourselves through our interactions with our caregivers. If you scraped your knee and ran to your mom or dad, and they said, "Oh, it's nothing, just get up," you might start to learn that your pain isn't important, or that you're weak for feeling it. That's one instance. But imagine that happening repeatedly, over and over again. That's where the weed starts to take root. Now, it's important to say that sometimes people invalidate us without meaning to be harmful. They might be trying to toughen us up, or they might just not know how to deal with big emotions. But the impact is still the same. Let's say you're feeling really stressed at work. You tell your partner, "I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't know how I'm going to get everything done." And they respond with, "Everyone's stressed, just deal with it." Or maybe they say, "You're so lucky to have a job. You shouldn't complain." On the surface, they might think they're being helpful, but what you're hearing is, your feelings aren't valid. Your struggles aren't real. You're wrong for feeling this way. Over time, that can lead you to doubt your own experiences. You might start to think, "Am I just being dramatic? Am I too sensitive? Maybe I shouldn't feel this way." You start to shut down your emotions because it feels safer than being invalidated. And that's when those weeds really start to spread. You might start avoiding situations that trigger those feelings, or you might become overly critical of yourself, always trying to anticipate what others will say or think. Another common example is around family dynamics. Maybe you grew up in a family where expressing anger was a big no-no. Every time you tried to express frustration or disagreement, you were told to calm down or stop being so negative. You might have learned that your anger is bad and that you should suppress it at all costs. But anger is a normal human emotion. It's a signal that something isn't right, that a boundary has been crossed, or that a need isn't being met. When you're constantly told to suppress it, you don't learn how to deal with it in a healthy way. It can get bottled up inside, leading to resentment, anxiety, or even depression. And that can manifest in all sorts of ways in your adult life. Maybe you become a people pleaser, always putting others' needs before your own to avoid conflict. Or maybe you find yourself exploding in anger at small things because you haven't learned how to regulate your emotions. It's not about blaming your family or your partner. It's about understanding how these patterns of invalidation can shape your emotional landscape. Now, here's the thing about these kinds of traumas. Because they're often subtle, they can be really hard to spot. You might not even realize that you've been affected by them. You might just think, "That's just how I am. I'm just an anxious person. I'm just not good at relationships." But the truth is, those patterns might be rooted in these earlier experiences of invalidation. So, how do you start to identify these weeds in your own garden? Well, the first step is awareness. Start paying attention to how you feel in different situations. Notice when you feel like you're shrinking yourself or hiding your true feelings. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Have I felt this way before? Is there a pattern here? For example, let's say you're at a meeting at work and you have a great idea, but you hesitate to share it because you're worried about what other people will think. You might notice a familiar feeling of anxiety, a tightness in your chest, a voice in your head telling you that your idea is stupid. That's a clue. That's a weed poking its head up. Then you can start to trace that feeling back. Have you felt this way before? Maybe you remember a time in school when you shared an idea and it was ridiculed by your classmates. Or maybe you had a parent who was very critical, and you learned that your ideas weren't valued. Once you start to connect the dots, you can begin to challenge those old beliefs. You can remind yourself that you're not that kid anymore. You're an adult, and your ideas have value. You can choose to share your idea, even if it feels scary. This is where the real work begins. It's about reparenting yourself, giving yourself the validation that you didn't get when you were younger. It's about learning to trust your own feelings and experiences, even when others try to tell you that you're wrong. It's like tending your garden. You can't just rip out the weeds once and expect them to never come back. You have to consistently nurture the good stuff and gently remove the things that are holding you back. And remember, healing isn't linear. There will be days when you feel like you're making progress and days when you feel like you're backsliding. That's normal. Be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and celebrate the small victories along the way. So how can you start tending your garden today? Here are a couple of things to consider. First, start paying attention to your inner critic. That voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, or that you're going to fail, or that you're unlovable. Where does that voice come from? What are the messages it's telling you? And is that voice actually helping you, or is it just holding you back? Think of your inner critic like an old radio that's constantly playing negative news. You don't have to believe everything it says. You can change the station. You can turn it off altogether. Second, practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend who's struggling. When you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up about it. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on. Think of self-compassion like a warm blanket on a cold day. It's a way of soothing yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed. It's a reminder that you're not alone and that you're worthy of love and acceptance, just as you are. Finally, ask yourself, what is one small act of validation I can give myself today? Can I acknowledge a feeling I've been trying to ignore? Can I set a boundary with someone who's been draining my energy? Can I do something that makes me feel good just because I deserve it? Sometimes, the smallest acts of self-care can have the biggest impact. It's about showing yourself that you matter, that your feelings are valid, and that you're worthy of love and happiness. Healing from these subtle traumas takes time and effort. It's not a quick fix, and there will be moments when you feel discouraged. But please know that it's possible. You can learn to identify those weeds, challenge those old beliefs, and create a more nurturing and fulfilling life for yourself. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Many of us have experienced these kinds of subtle traumas, and many of us are working to heal from them. So take a deep breath, be kind to yourself, and start tending your garden. You deserve it. That's all for today's episode of Your Brain Lied. I hope this conversation has been helpful. Remember, your feelings are valid, your experiences matter, and you are worthy of love and healing. Subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.